Do people often tell you that you look younger than you actually are? When you say your real age, do they pause for a moment, furrow their brow, and say, "You don't look it"? If that has ever happened to you, even once, pay close attention over the next few minutes, because the real reason is none of the three you're imagining right now. You probably credit it to good genes, to some expensive cream, or simply to luck. And I've come here to tell you, with all my care, that you're mistaken. The truth is far deeper, far more beautiful, and far more yours than any of those explanations. In Buddhist wisdom, which has crossed more than 2,500 years and is still alive, there's a simple teaching. The face is only the visible surface of water that runs underneath. If the inner water is murky, agitated, turbulent, the face gives it away. If the water is clear and serene, the face reveals that too. In other words, if you look younger on the outside, it's because you have won, in silence, an inner battle that the overwhelming majority of people lose every single day without even knowing they're fighting. And no one ever told you this, because no one can see that battle taking place. Today I'm going to reveal to you the 7 hidden reasons why you look younger than your age. It isn't magic. It isn't luck. It isn't genetics. It's a mind you've built over years, most likely without realizing you were building it. And I'll warn you right now, reason number 7 is the deepest of them all. It's the one that sustains the other 6, and very few people in this world ever reach it. So stay with me until the end. But before I begin, I want to invite you into an ancient practice, and it takes 10 seconds. In the Buddhist tradition, there's something called metta, which means loving kindness, and the teaching is this: whatever good you sincerely wish for another person, you must first feel inside yourself in order to wish it. And that's why the good you send out comes back multiplied. So do this with me now. Go to the comments and write this sentence, feeling every word. May the peace and lightness of the soul be in me and in you. Write it along with your real age and what city, state, or country you're watching me from, because I want to see how many of us, spread across the world, are winning the same battle in silence. And now comes the most important part of that gesture. When you see the comment of another person down here who also wrote it, reply to them with a good wish, a word of kindness, a sincere blessing, because that's exactly where it works. Wishing good for yourself is good, but wishing good for another with an open heart is what truly transforms the one who wishes. One candle lights another without ever losing its own flame. And when many candles are lit together, the whole room fills with light. Do it now, it's quick, and come back here. Because the 7 reasons I'm about to show you make far more sense once your heart has opened with that small gesture. And if this is your first time watching the channel, subscribe. Because this is where we recover the ancient wisdom that truly changes the way you live and the way you age. First reason, you stopped worrying about what isn't within your control. And I want you to look around you for a moment, because this is the most visible difference of all. The overwhelming majority of people live eaten away by things they cannot change in any way. They rage about the country's politics. They're consumed by what the neighbor did, by what a relative said, by a tragedy that happened in a part of the world they'll never set foot in. They wake up already tense and go to sleep clenched, mentally fighting the entire world. And here's the most painful part. None of it changes anything at all out there, but it changes everything in here. You, at some point in your life, learned what those people still haven't learned. That grieving over what isn't in your hands is only wounding yourself with your own fingernails. Buddhism teaches this beautifully, through detachment. Detachment is not caring, as many people wrongly think. Detachment is caring deeply and still releasing what isn't yours to carry. It's acting where you can act and handing the rest over to the natural flow of things. And notice what happens to those who never learn to release. Constant tension lives in the body before it appears on the face. The furrowed brow, the clenched jaw, the raised shoulders, the tight gaze. It isn't age that hardens those faces. It's resistance. But your mind found peace, and that peace shows before you say a single word. Only peace alone doesn't explain everything, because there's an invisible weight that almost everyone carries on their back, and it ages people faster than any worry. And that's what the second reason is about. Second reason, you freed yourself from the weight of the past. And I want you to picture a scene with me, because it explains everything. Picture a person carrying a backpack. Only inside that backpack, there's no clothing, no book, nothing useful. There's a grudge from 20 years ago. There's a bitter sentence someone said to them in their teens that they could never forget. There's regret over a wrong choice. There's the vivid memory of a betrayal, a humiliation, an injustice that was never made right. And they carry that backpack everywhere, every day, for decades. They wake up with it on their back, and they sleep with it on their back. Now answer me honestly, how long do you think a human body can carry that weight before it starts to give way? Because that's exactly what happens. And it isn't poetry, it's observation. That load doesn't stay trapped in memory alone. It travels down into the body. It hardens the jaw, tightens the neck, grips the chest, and hollows the face. There's a Buddhist saying that holding on to resentment is like grasping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at someone. The one who gets burned first is you. And most people are walking around with a raw hand and no idea why. But you did something different, and it was probably the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. At some point, you opened that backpack and began taking the stones out, one by one. You forgave those who hurt you. And I need to be very clear about what that means, because almost everyone misunderstands it. Forgiving is not saying that what they did to you was right. It isn't pretending it didn't hurt. And it doesn't necessarily mean reconciling with the person who wounded you. Forgiving is deciding that you will no longer carry that. It's dropping the coal. In Buddhism, that gesture sits at the heart of the practice, because hatred, revenge, and rage are seen as poisons of the mind. And poison doesn't distinguish whose hand is holding it. It poisons whoever carries it. And when you took those poisons out of yourself, something loosened in your face. The muscles relaxed. The gaze cleared. That expression of rest that people see in you and call youth is, in truth, the absence of inner war. That's why they can't explain what they're seeing. They look for an answer in your skin, when the answer is in your memory. And here I need to give you a distinction that frees many people who spent years trying to forgive and failing. Perhaps that's your case, or the case of someone you love. Many people can't release the past because they believe a lie, that forgiving means going back to living alongside the person who hurt them, or worse, accepting that what happened was fair. And then they freeze, because their whole body refuses to do that. And rightly so. So they give up on forgiving and keep holding the coal in their hand, thinking there's no other choice. But listen closely, because this changes everything. Forgiving and reconciling are two completely different things. Reconciling is an act involving two people. It requires remorse on the other side. It requires rebuilding trust. And sometimes it simply isn't possible or healthy. Forgiving, on the other hand, is an act that happens entirely inside you, alone, and doesn't depend in the slightest on the other person. You can forgive someone who will never apologize. You can forgive someone who has already died. You can forgive someone and still never let that person into your life again. And that isn't a contradiction at all. That's wisdom. Forgiving is simply deciding that person has already occupied too much of your present, and that you will no longer pay rent in your own head to a memory. It's dropping the rope in that tug of war you've been pulling alone for years, because on the other side there probably isn't anyone pulling anymore. And when you drop that rope, the relief that runs through your body is physical. You feel it in your shoulders. It's that relief others see in your face and can't name. And here's the part almost nobody notices about this process. The body doesn't know the difference between a memory and an event. When you mentally relive a humiliation from 20 years ago, your body reacts in that instant as if it were happening all over again, right now. Tension rises, breathing shortens, the jaw locks. And if a person does this every day, they literally live that trauma hundreds of times, when it truly happened only once. Modern research associates that state of chronic tension with markers of aging in the body, and it's striking how it confirms what the ancients had already observed just by looking at people. You, by releasing the past, stopped reliving those scenes, and by ceasing to relive them, you gave your body what it needed most, true rest. Not the rest of sleeping, the rest of existing without being on alert. And look how interesting, because that serenity gave you something more, something most people deeply fear and avoid at all costs. They run from it their entire lives, filling silence with noise. You, on the contrary, learn to inhabit that place. And that's what the third reason is about. Third reason, you stopped fearing solitude. And I need you to understand the size of this, because in the society we live in, it's almost a superpower. Most people are terrified of being alone with themselves. Notice how they live. The moment silence appears, they grab the phone. The moment they're without company, they turn on the television. They need constant noise, conversation, other people's opinions, approval. They can't eat lunch alone without a screen in front of them. And do you know why that happens? Because being in silence with yourself means meeting whatever is inside. And many people are afraid of what they'll find. So they run. And they spend their whole lives running. Not you. At some point, you stopped running and discovered that silence wasn't an enemy, it was a resting place. In the Buddhist tradition, that silence is sacred, and that's why monks seek it, not because they scorn people, but because it's in silence that the mind finally settles. Like muddy water that only becomes clear when no one stirs it. And your mind settled. And look at what that choice spared you, because it's more concrete than it seems. You stepped away from useless arguments, the kind that lead nowhere and only leave everyone more irritated. You stopped feeling the need to prove yourself to others, to win debates, to have the last word. You no longer take part in gossip, in judging others, in the compulsion to meddle in other people's lives. And each of those things you stopped doing gave you back an enormous amount of mental energy that used to drain away, producing absolutely nothing. Think about someone who does the opposite, the person who talks too much, who needs to comment on everything, who gets involved in every conflict, who carries half a dozen people's lives in their head. That person lives in a state of permanent depletion. They don't rest even while sleeping, because the mind keeps chewing over the day's argument. And that depletion has a face, a gaze, a posture, whereas someone who chose silence keeps a reserve of energy the others spent. And stored energy is vitality, and vitality is what people see in you and call youth. But I want to make an important distinction here, because it's delicate and many people confuse it. Choosing silence isn't isolation, and it isn't coldness toward others. Isolation is fleeing from people out of fear or hurt, and that makes you ill. What I'm describing is different. It's having so much peace with yourself that you don't need anyone in order to feel whole, and precisely because of that, when you are with someone, you're truly there, present, whole, without begging for approval. Do you see the difference? Whoever fears solitude uses people to fill a hole. Whoever has conquered that fear can simply love people without needing them in order to exist. And that's why your presence feels lighter. People enjoy being near you and can't explain why. It's because you're not asking anything of them. And that same capacity for not needing, for not chasing, shows up in another area of your life, in a place where the entire modern world is addicted and you manage to escape. That's the fourth reason. Fourth reason, you don't chase cheap pleasures. And I need to show you the size of the trap you escaped, because it caught practically the entire world. Today, millions of people trade their own sleep, their own health, and their own time for momentary amusement. They scroll the feed until 3 a.m, knowing they have to be up at 6. They spend hours watching videos they can't remember the next day. They eat what they know harms them, drink what they know disrupts them, postpone what they know matters, all in exchange for 30 seconds of relief. And here's the hidden price. Each of those trades seems small in isolation, but added up over years, they collect payment in the body, in the face, in the energy, in the expression. Buddhism has a word that describes exactly this cycle, tanha, the restless and insatiable craving that keeps a person chasing one satisfaction after another and never feeling full. It's the thirst that drinks salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. And the face of someone living in that cycle carries a restlessness, a scatteredness, a tiredness no cream resolves. You at some point stepped out of that race, and it wasn't from a surplus of willpower. It was something else. You found something bigger to point your attention toward. Your focus is on your work, on your path, on what you understand as your purpose. And when a real purpose exists, cheap pleasure loses its appeal on its own, effortlessly, because it starts to look far too small next to what you're building. Notice that this is the opposite of what people imagine. They think discipline is suffering, deprivation, saying no all the time through gritted teeth. It isn't. Real discipline is having a yes so large that the no's become easy. And that's where a visible transformation happens. When someone devotes themselves to something great and doesn't let their attention scatter in 1,000 directions, a particular steadiness appears in the gaze, a calm belonging to someone who knows where they're going. And that clarity is magnetic, because it's rare. And how do you know whether you're still caught in that cycle of easy pleasure? Because most people caught in it swear they aren't. And that's why I want to give you some very concrete signs so you can check for yourself. Honestly, first sign, you pick up your phone for no reason at all. Not to see something specific, not to answer anyone. You just pick it up, unlock it, look, and don't even know what you were looking for. That isn't a habit. That's the mind asking for a dose. Second sign, you can't stay 5 minutes still without stimulation. In a line, in an elevator, waiting for food to arrive, your hand goes on its own looking for something to fill the gap. Third sign, you end the day without remembering anything meaningful you did, but with a strange sense of exhaustion, the tiredness of someone who neither rested nor produced. Fourth sign, and this one is the most revealing of all, you systematically postpone what truly matters to you, then punish yourself for having postponed it, and use that discomfort as an excuse to seek one more dose of distraction, closing a perfect circle of self-sabotage. If you recognized any of those, don't blame yourself, because this trap was built by very intelligent people precisely to capture human attention. But recognizing it is already half the way. And the way out isn't brute willpower. It's what I told you. Finding something big enough to point your attention toward. Because the mind doesn't stay empty. It will always fill with something. The only choice you have is deciding with what. And let me tell you about something that seems invisible but everyone perceives. Scattered attention shows on the face. The person who is always in 10 places at once, who checks the phone in the middle of a conversation, who is never fully anywhere, has a gaze that doesn't land. It's a slightly anxious gaze, always heading somewhere else, whereas someone with focus has a gaze that rests on you when they speak. And that's read unconsciously by other people as presence, as security, as vitality. That's why someone can be 50 and look more alive than a 25-year-old who lives scrolling screens. The youth people see in you isn't in the absence of lines, it's in the presence of direction. They look at you and sense that somebody is home. But there's one thing that erodes that steadiness faster than anything else. A psychological illness that aged half the world before its time, and you cured yourself of it. That's the fifth reason, and it's probably the most liberating of them all. Fifth reason, and pay very close attention to this one, because it's the most liberating of all, you cured yourself of the question, what will people think? That seemingly harmless sentence has aged half the world before its time, and I'm going to prove it to you. Think of how many people you know who don't do what they want out of fear of judgment, who don't change careers because of what people will say, who don't end an unhappy relationship because of what the family will comment, who don't dress how they'd like, don't say what they think, don't go where they wanted to go, all because of an imaginary audience that isn't even paying attention to them. Those people live in a prison without bars, where the jailer is other people's opinion. And the cost of that is enormous, because nothing wears down a human being more than living a life that isn't theirs in order to please people who aren't even looking. You understood, at some point, a simple and difficult truth. Pleasing everyone is mathematically impossible. There will always be someone dissatisfied with you, and that person will exist regardless of what you do. So fighting it is fighting the wind. Buddhism teaches this through an image that has crossed centuries. The 8 worldly winds, praise and blame, fame and disgrace, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. Those winds blow over every life, and they will blow over yours without exception. The question was never how to stop the wind, because that isn't possible. The question is whether you're a leaf flying wherever the wind sends it or a mountain that feels the wind pass and remains. You became a mountain, and people perceive that in you even without being able to name it. And now notice what that cure did to your body, because this is where it becomes appearance. When someone carries the constant weight of other people's judgment, it shows in the posture. The shoulders close in a little, the head tilts, the body shrinks, the voice grows quieter and less certain. It's the body language of someone always apologizing for existing. And nobody needs training to read that. We read it unconsciously and interpret it as tiredness, as defeat, as age. Now when that weight comes off, the body opens naturally. The shoulders come back, the chest opens, the chin lifts, the voice finds its own volume, the gaze holds another's gaze without fleeing. And that posture is read universally as confidence, and confidence is read as vitality and as youth. You didn't do any exercise for that, mind you. You simply took a weight off, and the body straightened on its own, because that was your natural shape all along. But there's something that can bring all of that down in seconds. One single moment of losing control, and the sixth reason is about how you learn to pass through those moments without getting burned. Sixth reason, your emotional control. the silent mastery over your own reactions. And I'm going to describe a scene you'll recognize immediately. Someone provokes you. Someone cuts you off in traffic, answers you rudely, accuses you of something unfair, disrespects you in front of other people. What happens inside an ordinary person in that instant? An explosion. The blood rises, the heart races, the jaw locks, the words come out before the thought, and then comes the regret. They reacted. And here's the detail. They didn't choose anything. They were controlled from the outside in, like a marionette. Whoever provoked them pressed a button, and they obeyed. Now what do? You pause. A space, however tiny, between what happened and what you're going to do about it. And it's inside that minuscule space that all your freedom lives. Buddhism has a name for that pause, mindful attention. It's the capacity to observe anger arising inside you without becoming the anger. Notice the enormous difference between saying I am furious and saying I notice that anger is arising in me. In the first sentence, you are the storm. In the second, you are the sky watching the storm pass. And the sky is never destroyed by the storm, however violent it may be. You learned to be sky. And that doesn't mean you don't feel anger, because someone who feels no anger isn't wise, they're numbed. It means anger arrives, you recognize it. It does its job of warning you about something, and it passes without consuming you, and without making you destroy things you'd take years to rebuild. And let me teach you exactly how to make that pause. In practice, because talking about not reacting is easy, the hard part is doing it in the instant the blood rises. So hold on to this sequence. It's simple, and it works. First, when you feel the anger arriving, and you will feel it because it arrives in the body before it arrives in the head, your only job is not to open your mouth. Nothing more. You don't need to calm down. You don't need to forgive. You don't need any of that yet. Just don't speak. Second, breathe once, slowly. And while you breathe, name inwardly what's happening, telling yourself something like anger has arrived. It sounds silly, but naming an emotion changes how the brain processes it, and it loses strength almost immediately. Third, notice where it is in your body. In the chest? In the throat? In the hands? That simple act of observing takes you out of the emotion and places you outside it, like someone watching the storm through a window instead of standing in the middle of it. Fourth, only then do you decide what to do. And look how interesting. Most of the time, you'll decide to do something quite different from what you'd have done in the first 3 seconds. There's an ancient piece of wisdom saying that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that inside that space lives all of human freedom. Most people live their entire lives without ever discovering that space, reacting automatically to everything, like a bell that rings whenever someone strikes it. You learn to inhabit that space, and that's why no one can control you by pressing your buttons. And what this does to your body is the central point of this reason. Every explosion of anger triggers in the organism a cascade of intense reactions designed for a life or death emergency. The body prepares to fight. That's useful when there's real danger, but it's devastating when it happens 3 times a day because of traffic, a misread message, and a family argument. Studies associate that chronic reactivity with wear on the body over time, and it makes perfect sense. A body living in a state of emergency has no time to repair itself. Your nervous system, on the other hand, spends most of the day at rest, and it's in that state of rest that the body performs maintenance, regeneration, repair, while most people spend the energy of rebuilding on putting out emotional fires. Your body can use it to sustain itself. And that's how a person is preserved, not with cream, but with regulation. And now we reach the seventh reason, the deepest of them all, the one that sustains the other six, and that very few people reach in an entire lifetime. Stay with me, because this is the one that changes everything. Seventh and final reason, and this one is the root of all the others. You accepted your own destiny. There's a beautiful concept in ancient wisdom that describes this. Loving whatever life gives you, whatever it may be. Not resigning yourself, not giving up, but ceasing to fight with what already is. And I want you to understand why that's so rare. Most people spend their entire lives at war with reality. They fight with the rain that fell on the day of the outing. They fight with the aging of their own body. They fight with the fact that things change, that people leave, that nothing stays the same. And that war is impossible to win, because reality doesn't negotiate. Every day of fighting is a day of pure depletion, with no gain whatsoever. This sits at the heart of Buddhism. Impermanence isn't a tragedy. It's the nature of things. Everything that is born changes. Everything that comes together one day comes apart. And human suffering isn't born from impermanence itself. It's born from our refusal to accept it. You stopped complaining. You understood at a deep level that there will be illness at some point, that there will be losses, that there will be bad days, and that the body will one day fail, because that's how it is for everyone who has ever lived. And here's the most beautiful paradox of all. The instant you accepted that hard truth with your heart, the fear of the unknown simply lost its power. The fear of death, the fear of old age, the fear of failure, they were feeding precisely on your refusal to look at them. When you looked straight at them, they shrank. And in the space fear used to occupy, something else moved in. A deep and serene joy that doesn't depend on any circumstance in order to exist. That's why you can laugh at small things, be enchanted by an ordinary morning, feel gratitude for a day with nothing special in it. You aren't waiting for life to improve in order to start living. You're already living. And there's an application of that acceptance that is the hardest of all, and I need to speak about it with you, because this is precisely where this video becomes honest. Accepting impermanence is beautiful while we're talking about the seasons or the leaves that fall. It gets difficult when the subject is your own body, because your body is changing, and it will keep changing, and no practice, no meditation, and no wisdom is going to stop that. The lines of expression will deepen, the hair will whiten, energy will distribute itself differently. And I didn't come here to sell you the fantasy that your serene mind will freeze time, because that would be a lie and you deserve better. What I came to tell you is something more beautiful and more true. Inner peace doesn't stop you from aging, it completely changes the way you age. There's an enormous difference between a 60-year-old face at war with its own 60 years and a 60-year-old face at peace with them. Both have the same lines, but one is tense, resisting, trying to hide, and the other is loose, inhabited, present. And that's what people are reading when they say you don't look your age. They aren't saying your skin belongs to someone younger. They're saying, without knowing how to translate it, that you don't carry the weight that usually comes with those years. You age without growing bitter, and that is exceedingly rare, and that shines. And this, more than anything else, is what people see in you. Because fear has a face. Someone who spends their days afraid of what's coming carries a background tension, an expectation of threat, and that hardens the expression in a way no treatment undoes. Whereas someone who has made peace with their own finitude has a genuine relaxation in the face, the kind that only exists when there's nothing left to fear. That's why I tell you with full conviction, You measure your age by something other than the calendar's years. You measure it by how much life still burns in you. And that's what confuses people when you tell them your real age. They're comparing the number with the flame, and the flame doesn't match the number. Now, before we close, I want to come back to that gesture I asked of you at the beginning, because it has everything to do with this seventh reason, and it ties together everything we've talked about. Remember what I asked of you at the start, to write in the comments, "May the peace and lightness of the soul be in me and in you," and to reply to whoever also wrote it. Now I can explain why that wasn't just any request. All 7 reasons we saw today have one thing in common. They're all about releasing. Releasing what you can't control. Releasing the past. Releasing the fear of solitude. Releasing easy pleasure. Releasing other people's opinions. Releasing the impulsive reaction. Releasing the fight with destiny. And the quickest act of releasing there is wishing something good for someone without expecting anything in return. Because in that instant, you aren't holding anything. You're giving. In the practice of metta, that wish begins in you, expands to those you love, then to strangers, and finally even to those who hurt you. And the effect is always the same. Whoever wishes good feels the good first, because it passes through them in order to get out. So if you haven't written it yet, write it now, and reply to someone down here with a sincere blessing. The bigger our chain, the stronger the peace of each one of us becomes. And let me recap the 7 reasons for you to keep. You stopped worrying about what you can't control. You freed yourself from the weight of the past. You stopped fearing solitude. You stopped chasing cheap pleasures. You cured yourself of what will people think. You gained mastery over your own emotions, and you accepted your destiny with an open heart. Notice that not one of them has anything to do with your skin, your hair, or your body. All of them have to do with your mind. And if you read those 7 and felt that you still haven't won some of them, don't be saddened in the slightest, because that's precisely the good news. None of these things is genetic. None is luck. None is the privilege of a fortunate few. All of them are trainable. All of them are built, one day at a time, with practice and patience. You can start today with the one that moved you most, and the others will follow, because each one sustains the next. So the next time someone tells you that you look younger than you really are, smile gently and keep this secret with you. Because that isn't a compliment to your face, nor to your genes, nor to your care routine. It's a compliment, without the person knowing it, to the serene mind you built over years, fighting alone against the thoughts of the small hours, forgiving what hurt, releasing what wasn't yours to carry, and choosing peace when it would have been so much easier to choose the fight. That isn't sold in any pharmacy. Before you go, do 3 quick things for me. First, comment which of these 7 reasons you've already won and which one is still your battle, because I read every reply and it's what shows me what our community most needs to hear. Second, share this video with someone who's been carrying a weight they could have released long ago, because sometimes a word at the right moment frees an entire life. And third, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so this ancient wisdom can reach more people who need it. May the peace and lightness of the soul be with you. I'll be waiting for you at our next meeting.